Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to everybody here, and particularly to those who are listening to this as a recording. And it's a lovely thing to remind ourselves that in the present moment, which is the only moment, those of us meeting here in this time, and those of us meeting at other times and listening to this as a recording, are all meeting together. So we meet at a special time, and in our morning prayer this morning, Tim, which Tim led us in, he reminded us that we have just entered the sacred time of winter, of Soen, a time when the veils between the worlds are thin as we cross the threshold from autumn to winter. But really the whole time of winter is a time when the veils between the worlds are thin. And it's a wonderful time a wonderful sacred time. Nan C Merrill, whose psalms we use in our morning prayer, also wrote some versions of the wisdom sayings of the Hebrew Old Testament. And in one of them, she writes, or her version is, "Wisdom abides in deep recesses of the heart. Who is at home to receive her? Wisdom abides in deep recesses of the heart. Who is at home to receive her?" So let us go within and dwell on this question as we cross this threshold into winter, into this deep time, into this sacred time of growing darkness. As we drop from mind into heart, wisdom abides in the deep recesses of the heart. Are we at home to receive her? So wisdom abides in the deep recesses of the heart. Who is at home to receive her? Well, how do we become at home to receive wisdom? How do we descend so fully and deeply into the heart of ourself, and helped by descending into the heart of the year, the heart of this winter time, so that we can receive wisdom for this, the beginning of this year, this new year. And today in morning prayer, we heard some of the story of Judith. It's a story in the Apocrypha of the Hebrew Bible, and it's the most beautiful myth. I think it's generally considered to be myth, and extraordinary that it should be written, and written solely about this woman called Judith. And Judith is a widow. Her husband has died, and she runs a business and she runs a household, and she's a contemplative. She spends her time in prayer and seeks God's guidance. She seeks wisdom from the depths of her heart all the time, and she's known to it. People, men and women, go to consult with her. And one day this calamity occurs, and King Nebuchadnezzar sends an almighty army to wipe out, really, or to capture land after land, people after people. And eventually the army, which is thousands and thousands of soldiers, comes to a little village called Bethulia. And Bethulia apparently means virgin. It's related to the word virgin, and so it's related to the word pure. And Bethulia stands between Holofernes, the commander of Nebuchadnezzar's army, and Jerusalem. And Bethulia is only a small town. And Holofernes and the army cut off the water supply, and the people last as long as they can, which is 30 odd days. And eventually they're exhausted, and they, the men, the elders of the town gather and say, well, if God doesn't rescue us in 5 days, then we'll have to surrender. And Judith steps forward. In fact, she summons the elders of the town to her house. She has that much power and respect. And she says, you're holding God to ransom. We need to pray. But they can't tolerate that. And so she decides to act by herself. And her story in this way is rather like the story of Saint Francis as well, although it's the story of the feminine here. It's very similar to the story of Saint Francis setting off in the Crusades across the battlefields to make peace with the Saracen army. Well, Judith sets off with her maid and ritually pure food and prayer. She prays before she goes, and she prays while she's there. And she gets taken to Holofernes in his tent. And she doesn't eat their food. She remains pure. And eventually on the fourth day, he said, come and eat with me, banquet with me. And he intends to seduce her. And she takes her ritually pure food and sticks to that, and he gets drunk, and in fact, he gets dead drunk. And he's lying on his bed, and she takes his sword and she cuts his head off. And she returns to the town with his head. And hence, she returns to the town, and she is feted by the town as the flower and the glory of the people. And she leads a wonderful dance through the town with the women, followed by the men, and everyone is singing and dancing. So this story is the story of faith and a feminine way, perhaps, of being receptive to the guidance of the divine, being open to what may happen and responding from the present moment. She is at home to receive wisdom. And when we speak of the feminine, of course, we're speaking of the feminine, of the receptive in both men and women. An example which the story of Saint Francis doing something really quite similar shows very, very well. And one might see the end of the last year, which ended with the autumn, which has just finished. Coming to a halt. The outer life of the last year has reached its end. And like Judith, we must cut off its head. It's gone, and all our successes and mistakes stand as they are. But we must move on into the new year, towards this rebirth and renewal. We must act decisively and turn towards the new, turn towards what is deep within us. So another version by Nan C Merrill of the wisdom sayings. Listen in the silence for Spirit's voice, guiding your soul. For service in the great renewal, the new creation, the citadel of love here on earth. All are welcome together as one. Listen, attune, and heed the inner voice of love. For in sacred silence, we open ourselves to wisdom, to ever deepening communion with the source of all creation. For in sacred silence, we open ourselves to wisdom, in ever deepening communion with the source of all creation. So let us open ourselves to be receptive. Our hearts are a vessel, if you like, a beautiful vessel to catch the wisdom, the drops of wisdom for appearing like dew from heaven. In the Gospel of Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, Jesus says, I come from the one who is openness. That is why I say that when disciples are open, they are filled with light. When they are divided, they are filled with darkness. I come from the one who is openness. That is why I say that when disciples are open, they are filled with light. When they are divided, they are filled with darkness. So let us work with our breath, opening, becoming more receptive to wisdom, to guidance, to the renewal of life in us as we sink deeper into the meditation, into the dark of winter, into the silence within. So as we inhale, let us open. Lifting ourselves into limitlessness. As we inhale, let us open into limitlessness. As we exhale, let us bring that limitlessness into our lives. As we inhale, let us open into limitlessness. As we exhale, let us bring that limitlessness into our life, into our individual limited being, that is. I come from the one who is openness. That is why I say that when disciples are open, they are filled with light. So continuing, breathing in and opening, filling with light. Breathing out, bringing this light and wisdom and the Christ right into our individual being. In the Gospel of Philip, the disciples are noticing that how much time Jesus spends with Mary Magdalene. And they ask him, when the disciples saw how much he loved Miriam, they asked him, "Why do you love her more than us?" And he answered, "How can it be that I do not love you as much as I love her?" When a blind man and one who sees are both in the dark, there is no difference between them. But when they both come into the light, one sees it and the other remains in darkness. Why do you love her more than us? He said, "How can it be that I do not love you as much as I love her?" And he explains, when a blind man or woman and one who sees are both in the dark, there is no difference between them. But when they both come into the light, one sees it and the other remains in darkness. So can we be present? Can we be at home? Can our eyes, our inner eyes, be open to the light, to wisdom, to the Christ? there is a word which Jesus used to open the tongue and the hearing of a man that was afflicted with deafness and dumbness, as it was called in those days. And he used the word ephata, which is in Aramaic. It means be opened. And the roots of the word are related to beautiful things like the opening of a flower in full bloom, and enlightenment. So like Judith, we need to have courage to open to the unknown, to the dark. That means what we don't know with our small minds. So let us repeat together this sacred word, ephata. Be open. Ephata. 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 So concentrating on this vibration, on the breath, open, open, ephata. May I be open. May you be open. May we all be open in this most extraordinary year to the new, to the divine, to the unknown, where the light can get in. Where at the very depths of the unknown, the depths of the darkness, the Christ may incarnate in us. Listen in the silence for Spirit's voice, guiding your soul for service in the great renewal, the new creation, the citadel of love here on earth. All are welcome together as one. Listen, attune, and heed the inner voice of love. For in sacred silence, we open ourselves to wisdom, to ever deepening communion with the source of all creation. Amen.